So, Steve, you're saying they can hear us now on the air?
I certainly heard you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's pretend we're talking, and Veronica, let's pretend we're talking about secret stuff before it starts. Gossip.
I know, right?
Steve, you really going to do a countdown?
Sure.
Let you get all.
All right.
Yes.
What are you going to need to do a countdown?
You're going to need a couple of horses or a couple of mules.
10, 9, 8, 7.
He's really
6,
counting down.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yo! Welcome to the lounge. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
What are you supposed to do? Like, what? I forget what gestures they
Hey
do.
there.
Anyway, welcome to the Podcasters Lounge. Here we talk. It's just a hangout for podcasters. News, topics, Q&A, whatever. Today we have Steve Stewart and Veronica Cravener with us. So thank you both for being here. And let's do a quick introduction for ourselves. I think you all know me. So Veronica.
Yeah, sure. So, hey there, everyone. I'm Veronica Cravener, and this is a special treat for me because I get to hang out and chat with two people who have taught me pretty much everything I know about audio. I'm based in Columbus, Ohio, and I host a podcast for the mediation community called the Mediate.com podcast. And then I also produce podcasts for mediators and mediation organizations.
Great. So you can mediate between me and Steve when we start to go at it, right?
I know, right?
You must read a lot of books on psychology and stuff, right? And
Oh my gosh, yes. So when I was, in the middle of mediating disputes, yes, I used to read books about like the psychology of decision making and negotiation tips and techniques and whatnot. So yes, I have read plenty of those books.
Yep, and there's your website, by the way. The link is below for everyone. And then, of course, we have Mr. Steve Stewart.
Hello. I love Veronica's niche. Niches are great. We should talk about niches. Let's put that on the agenda.
Let's talk about niches.
Talk about niches. I love talking about niches. I'm Steve Stewart. I do not actually have a podcast. Well, I have a podcast, but I retired it in 2015. So I no longer podcast, though. Every day I think about starting another one. But I do edit podcasts for basically my friends in the personal finance space. Have been doing it since 2016, full time, which is a dream. Never thought it could be possible. And here I am on the Podcasters Lounge with Chris Kern and Veronica.
That's right. So you're kind of podcasting today. And by the way, this is the Podcast Editor Academy, which is a really awesome group that you guys have, in addition to, of course, the Podcast Editors Club on Facebook, which we're streaming to right now. So, hey, everybody on the Podcast Editors Facebook group, which I can't be on anymore. Sorry. First world problems, I guess.
That's it. First world problems.
So we got a lot to talk about. There's so many topics to discuss. Where should we start? I think we should maybe start with, because Veronica, you suggested a topic which it doesn't seem correct. I mean, it doesn't seem like we should talk about it, but you had this idea that there are benefits to someone hosting a podcast, even if no one listens.
I know it sounds counterintuitive, right? And so where that came from. So, I've already mentioned I host and produce podcasts for the mediation community. And before I became a podcast producer, I was a mediator for almost 7 years. And what that meant was, I was helping people resolve disputes outside of a courtroom. And so I was trying to help people do that difficult task of going from conflict to consensus. And what I learned throughout that process is that building momentum is very important when you're trying to do something that's challenging, something that's difficult. And so now fast forward to being a podcast producer and talking to mediators who are considering doing podcasts, right? So how many of us have this profession, this day job that we do, and we're looking at podcasting as this marketing tool to help us promote whatever it is we do during the day? And so to think about going from no podcast, no listeners, to then building this thing that has this audience, that's a pretty big challenge, right? That takes time. And so, what I learned from my mediation experience is that along the way, it's helpful to focus on these little bright spots to help build momentum. And so that's where I just kind of came up with this idea of, well, hey, even if no one beyond your mom listens to your podcast, there's still some benefits. And these are just three that I've identified. I'm sure that there are more. Maybe you all have ideas as well. But the first thing I wanted to talk about really was just improving your communication skills, right? So I think about, years ago, I was an adjunct faculty member at a community college and I taught courses, at a community college. And then throughout my career, I've also made many presentations, some in person, some virtual. And I will say, after all those years of making presentations, no one has ever come up to me and told me about the filler words or my crutch words that I use. No one's come up to tell me, oh, do you realize that you can get kind of repetitive when you speak? And it has only been through listening back to my own audio and when doing a podcast that I started to realize, oh my gosh, here's all these crutch words that I used and I never even knew. And I need to work on being more succinct. So that's where I say, if you're someone that your day job is something else other than podcasting, and you're doing some public speaking, maybe you're making presentations at conferences, maybe you are providing updates at a department meeting, you're pitching to prospective clients, whatever it is you're doing. I mean, that's where podcasting has really helped me to develop those communication skills. And then the other thing I will say, so I don't mediate anymore formally, but I still serve as a trainer for mediation trainings for folks who want to use mediation skills. And I have a couple contracts to do that. And so I will tell you, when I jump on those virtual trainings with, my headphones, with my external microphone, I am always complimented on my sound quality. So that's just something that's just helped me in other work that I do. So that's the first thing.
That's cool.
And
so real quick though, Steve Stewart, what are some of the crutches you've used? So
is the biggest offender for me. And then I've been getting back into a lot lately. It's a lot. Oh my gosh. It's horrible.
It's hard. Mine is so. I use so a lot. I'm not so big on the or but I use so a ton. So.
Yeah.
I know. See, I just did it.
What's worse is when we end sentences with so yeah. So yeah. Like, drop the mic? No, it's not how it works. But all good points. I like the idea that we're practicing and but there's no feedback of people. I mean, I certainly experience what it's like to have, no listeners. At least that's with a lot of the live streams I do in the Facebook group. It seems like there's nobody there. But when it's happening, it's still creating content. I think for me, it's certainly the benefit of doing some kind of creative outlet, even if there's no listeners, can be then used in the future. It's practice. It's certainly better than just flipping through and watching, stuff on Hulu or trying to find something on a television if you're still doing cable. There's always benefits to creating and just having that creative outlet. My wife outside this room here, she has a painting that she's working on that there was no real reason to do it other than just to do it. She had the time, she wanted to do it. Creative outlet. Creative outlet's a great reason. And by the way, if anybody hears squeaking going in the background, we're fostering a dog and he has separation anxiety. And even though I'm here, he's just kind of like, oh. So apologize for all that. I'm going to mute myself when I'm not speaking, like right now.
Yeah, Steve, I don't. Does anyone know how to move someone on the screen in StreamYard? I'll figure it out. Anyway,
I thought you could
continue.
just grab it and move, but
just grab it and move.
It might
All right, I'll
be
try
in
it.
that gallery view. I don't know. StreamYard's updating their stuff, so
Right.
And I love StreamYard. Can't wait to try these new tools.
Yeah.
But Veronica, so other things to add? What do you?
Yeah, I mean, a couple more things I wanted to add is just, so you think about creating content. So you've talked about doing things that are creative. And, when you do a podcast, especially if you can do something like a solo podcast where it's just, you talking, sharing information about whatever it is your expertise is. I mean, you create this content, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, how podcasts can be repurposed into other things. But that's incredibly valuable. Like maybe you are someone who you make presentations, you write articles that get published. Maybe you are trying to engage with your audience on LinkedIn. I mean, you can repurpose that content from your podcast episode to help you with all those things. So, right now, I've mentioned I host a podcast for mediate.com, but I also created, just kind of as a test, because I wanted to see what it was like to do a solo podcast where it was just me talking. And I recorded like 4 or 5 episodes, posted the podcast player on my website. And I will tell you, the other day I did a presentation and I took some of that content that I had talked about in that solo podcast episode and repurposed it into the PowerPoint that I used for that presentation. So again, who knows how many people have listened to that really niche podcast. It's called Podcasting Like a Mediator. And that's where I just talk about how mediators can kind of leverage those skills like active listening and reframing to be a good and engaging podcast host. But that's just an example. Hardly anyone has listened to that particular podcast, but it's just helped me in terms of repurposing for content. And then the final thing I'll just add, is really just, if what you're looking for is to build an audience, we know that appearing on other people's podcasts as a guest is one way to do that. And I will say, so I've hosted now 2 different interview podcasts. So I actually hosted another mediation related podcast several years ago through my local bar association when I was participating in one of those committees at the time. And so as I reflect back on both of my experiences in hosting interview podcasts, the episodes that I think have been the most engaging have been with guests who host their own podcast because they're familiar with the process, they're comfortable with their voice. I have far fewer edits to make, and we can just spend so much more time talking about the theme for the episode versus of course, I'm always happy to talk to folks who are new to podcasting and haven't appeared on a podcast. But, I think about the time that I can dedicate to any one episode. That's a limited amount of time. And so time that I'm spending coaching someone on what to expect and, maybe how to use equipment if they haven't used it for the first time, that's time that I'm not able to spend on more like the content. And so that's where I will say, if you're looking to build that audience, even if no one listens to your podcast, just knowing what's involved will help you to be, I think, a much more effective and engaging guest on other people's shows that are more popular, which can help kind of elevate you as well. So those are just a few of my thoughts.
Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah, great points. Confidence is such a big deal in every facet of life. I know I joined Toastmasters. This has got to be 15 years ago now. And I did my first 10 speeches and I got my little competent communicator award. And let me tell you, you give 10 speeches. By the way, they're 4 or 5 minute speeches. They're very, very short. But you stand up in a room and give 4 or 5 speeches, your confidence it's immeasurably higher, right? Like you're a different person almost. Same thing with a podcast, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and then one area I'm just starting to learn a little bit more about, and Steve and Chris, maybe you all know more about this than me, but you hear people talking about just SEO and how much podcasts help your website SEO. Again, I haven't had a chance to kind of dive into that as much, but I mean, to me, that seems like another reason that, even if hardly anyone's listening to your podcast, it's just another benefit.
Well, then what you're talking about with SEO is to find that audience in the future. So we're doing the reps today because I actually had to go back to one of my one of my first episodes of my podcast back in 2010. Oh my God, no, 2011. And it was horrible. And I had to do something to fix something. I'm so much better at everything now than I was back then. So much better. And then when you think about, do I do a podcast even though nobody's listening? well, how do overnight successes happen? They don't just happen. They were doing something before the overnight success occurred where all of a sudden they're famous or rich or whatever. People don't hit the lotto on the first try. They go and they buy the tickets over and over and over again. Although I'm not recommending that, but that's kind of an example of all of a sudden, boom, they hit it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm an overnight success, So you got to do the reps if you want to become successful at something. Or in my case, I did a podcast and, I had some, I guess you call them success, but it was 8 years of building a financial coaching business that ultimately failed. And I became a podcast editor, two completely different related things, but it only happened because I was focused on building this financial coaching business. And I used a podcast to help market it. And I got, better than many at doing some of the things. And then when somebody else came up with the idea that they wanted to start a podcast and get some help, they asked me because I'd been encouraging people how to start podcasts. And I'm like, sure, but I got to charge you money for it. And even though I wasn't that good back then, other people were worse or didn't want to do it at all. And they're like, well, we know Steve. We like Steve. We want to have Steve work with us. And it became a career now that I just love. So all those reps that I was doing back in the day, the frustration, the heartache, the expense, it all became worth it. But the question that Veronica posed is, should you do a podcast even if nobody's listening? There is going to eventually become that opportunity cost.
Mm-hmm.
Where when is it just too much? Most of the time it's not the money. Most of the time it's the time. And if you don't have the time to work on it or put it out, and if you're just putting one out every 6 months, I mean, is it worth it? I don't know. That'd be hard to answer that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and I guess that's the key question. And certainly, I mean, absolutely, you want to go for audience. And I guess my whole point is think about it in baby steps, because a lot of the questions that I'm fielding from prospective clients in my niche is essentially that question. Is it worth it? Is it worth my time? Is it worth my energy? Is it worth my money? Is anyone going to listen? And I think
Barry has an answer to you for that, by the way.
No way. You crazy?
Is it worth it?
No way. You crazy?
Yeah, and for some it's worth it, and others it may not be. But it's almost like, trying to go from like 0 to 100 right off the bat. I don't know if everyone knows at the very beginning how big their audience is going to be. So that's where I say, like, there are some other steps in between to think about. If nothing else, will you at least get something out? Can it help your communication skills? Like I said, can it help you repurpose content? Can it help you be a better guest on other shows? If nothing else, can you at least get that out of it?
Right.
If the audience doesn't pan out. And certainly you hope the audience pans out. But
yeah, one thing I go by when starting something new, it really comes down to my heart. Like sometimes I just want to start doing something. Like that's how I got into podcasting. I was like, this is awesome. I want to do it. And like now maybe this is foolish of me, but my first thoughts weren't about business or return on investment or anything. I was like, I just want to do this. And so I guess that's what people can reflect on as well. Like there are things in life you just feel you want to do. It's like a natural flow to do it. There's something bigger going on, then you just go with the flow and it works out. And then you get all those perks that you mentioned, Veronica, as well.
Great discussion.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And don't forget, you can all be like Dave Jackson and start 45 podcasts if you want.
That's right.
I think he's in the 40s now. He's got to be in the 40s now.
He's got to be, at least. Yep.
But he's been doing it since 2005. And that's the other thing, an addendum to this conversation is sometimes you're doing one podcast and then you have an idea for a second one.
Yep.
Same things apply, but those are harder because by then you know how much work it takes, and then you're like, I don't know if I want to pull that trigger.
And we're back to the cost of time. The time is the biggest factor in that. So if you've got the time and you're willing to put it in, and you've got to have that, people, go to the job interviews. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? No. Just think a year in the future. I know a lot of people who they're told in their masterminds or whatever, give the podcast a year. And a lot of times it takes that year to be able to see the success from it, whether it's you got a lot of listeners or it's something else. One of my clients, probably about 5 to 6 years ago, they did that. They said, we're going to commit to a year. They're like, we don't know why we're going to spend all this money with you, Steve, to do this, but we're going to commit for a year. And about 3 months in, okay, so this is there were two hosts, a financial advisor and a estate planner. They're not the same, by the way. One's basically helping you plan for your life, and the other one's helping you plan for after you're gone. And they did this show. It was great. And about 3 months in, I think it was, one of them landed a new client because of the podcast. They had heard the podcast and they did the discovery call and everything. And they said it was about a $30,000 a year income they were going to generate from that one person. So would you do a podcast for a year without any results, but then land a $30,000 a year client? If you knew ahead of time that you were going to do that, maybe, probably.
That's a great point. And yeah, Jason Bryant here, dude, 24 shows that are now retired. That's approaching Dave Jackson level. That's impressive.
Or look at Mike Wilkerson's network, the Two Guys Talking Network. He's got probably 100 different shows on the network, and many of them feature him, or he has involvement with almost every single show that goes up in some form or fashion, not just the post-production side. There's people out there doing that. It's amazing. This is a wonderful, I love podcasting. I love the whole industry. I just love it.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we move on to another topic? Maybe one of your topics, Steve. I know you want to talk about YouTube podcasts for the next 17 hours straight, but
I'm so torn on it. Do people want to talk about it? Because I know, it's one of the big things in the news lately.
It is. I mean, we can mention. Let's give our thoughts. I mean, we don't have to spend a lot of time, but yeah.
Well, let me get Veronica's thoughts first, because I actually have like 6 bullet points that I could go through, and I don't want to take up the rest of the hour here.
No, well, I'll be honest. Like, I haven't looked into it too much. I've seen, the industry publications that have come out and they've mentioned that YouTube has podcasting, but no, feel free, Steve. Tell me what you know.
Well, I'll just give my 2 cents real quick. So, a lot of people were criticizing YouTube initially, and they still are, that they're not really, the way they're implementing it is not really that great or useful. And it's further diluting the word podcast, and there's more confusion. But at the same time, us veteran podcasters, we have to be willing to flow with this industry as it changes. And look, it's just a fact now. The word podcast means 17 different things, and it always will. And even more. So whatever YouTube's doing, we just got to go with it, see if it works. And, each of us can decide if we want to or how we want to try to use it or whatever. So anyway, Steve.
No, that's it. You're done. You covered everything I was going to. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
No, you're absolutely right, though. Absolutely both. And I remember seeing a video from Steph Fuccio just a couple days ago where she went to search in the YouTube Music app for podcasts, and it was in this weird community channel listing below all the other stuff, even though she searched exactly for the title. I was like, okay, there's a long ways to go. So right now we can't judge YouTube. You can't judge YouTube by the cover art? I don't know. What? So the first...
That's frightening.
The first thing, so it's good and bad. The first thing I would say is that it's good because it's going to bring a lot more visibility to podcasting. Visibility being the pun, visibility on YouTube. Haha. So that's great because we have this discoverability problem every single year in podcasting. And so this is going to bring more of that, more people into the space. But it's not really a podcast if it's just a channel on YouTube. I don't know. That's where
it's a playlist. Yeah.
I think YouTube's going to redefine the word podcasting, just like Chris said. It's going to be redefined. I hate it. I hate that it would have 17 different meanings. I would hate for it to be that way. But as we have progressed through podcasting, I mean, look what Spotify did. And now you can have a podcast on Spotify without an RSS feed. So that's redefined podcasting just on that one platform. So why couldn't YouTube do it? YouTube's a lot bigger, a lot more powerful. So I think we have to welcome that.
Totally.
My second point: people will create a video podcast on YouTube, but they won't be able to. But they won't be available on an actual podcast app, podcast player. From what I understand, they'll only be able to get it on the YouTube app. But that's what Spotify does, right? They've got shows that are only in the Spotify app.
Right.
So if I were to give a piece of advice in that case, then is anybody who is putting video onto YouTube and you want to call it a podcast, make sure that you put it in that playlist. And anybody who's already got their stuff up there, even though if it's the thumbnail image throughout the whole thing, get that into a playlist now and start building that foundation.
That's what I have to do, because that's what I'm doing. Libsyn is throwing my audio episodes onto YouTube with just my artwork in the video. There's no video, it's just artwork the whole way. And so now I got to go into my YouTube account and put every single episode in one playlist and then call that a podcast. So I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the one thing I wonder about, so did either of you watch Podfest Global last week?
Little bit.
There was 4 days of it, so
Yeah.
And Steve spoke.
What specifically?
Well, so did you attend the presentation where they were talking about like the listener statistics and just that like the completion rate of like a 30-minute YouTube video versus like 30-minute audio?
What is it? I want to know. Tell me.
I forget the exact stats, but I mean the listen through was it was so much higher for audio, right? Because people can multitask. I mean, they can cook, they can go for the run, they can listen to a podcast during their commute, whatever it is. That I wonder, with YouTube getting into podcasting, are people going to watch it, or is it just going to play on YouTube and they'll just listen and not watch?
Well, maybe somebody in the chat can tell us. I want to make sure I'm right on this, but isn't it if you don't pay for the YouTube, what is it called now? If you don't pay for YouTube, then once you turn off your screen, then you can't listen anymore.
That is correct.
Oh.
That's still the case. So
Still the case.
that's horrible for long form content of any kind, not just anybody who's calling it a podcast. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And that's why I can't just have my phone with YouTube open without watching it. It's got to be there. It's got to be, I just don't do it that way.
Right.
But a podcast, like Veronica said, multitasking, which is funny. You were talking about the analytics, because my third point is a pro for YouTube podcasts is YouTube analytics are golden. I mean, YouTube analytics are fantastic. If anybody's ever looked at Apple Podcast Connect stats or the ones you can get from Spotify, YouTube analytics are fantastic. So you'll need to learn that. But that's going to be great because you're going to be able to tell, if people are listening and if it's more than 2 seconds. And I think that's a problem in podcasting. We all look at downloads, but I listen to an episode and, oh, hey, I heard this one already. Within 30 seconds, I hop out. And if it's counted as a download, it's not really a listen. I've already listened to it in the past. So why would I listen to it again? So that means your stats are inflated. But if you're looking at the analytics, you can see, oh, people dropped off. Plus, we got the IAB parameters, which is, I believe it's anything less than a minute. If they stop listening, then it's not counted. But anything over a minute would be. But you want to see if, like with Apple Podcast Connect, Podcast Connect, you can see like where people start to drop off. It's really disheartening, but it's really good information that we all need to know. I'm going to open the door and let this guy out because he's driving me crazy.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we have 7 people watching. The dog makes 8, so we're losing 16.66% of our audience, but who's counting? By the way, real quick, Jason Bryant said he also put his primary show on hold while he takes care of clients. And his Short Time, which is his flagship show, hasn't put out a new episode since January. Yeah, it happens. I mean, I recently I didn't take a break. A break happened. I didn't decide on it, but I think I went 6 or 7 or 8 weeks between podcast episodes. And people actually, I felt bad because I posted something and then someone replied back and was like, "Oh, you're still doing your podcast?" Like they thought I quit. I'm like, I thought that was weird, but fair enough.
Now that's one out of how many though? And we podcasters, we just fester over the one piece of feedback because it's the piece of feedback. We got it. We don't usually get feedback, but we did. So you think that's what everybody's thinking. It may not be the case. I remember one of my 1-star reviews, and it just tore me apart. But I was like, no, that person's right. And it's not just the one person's advice. It's everybody else that might be thinking the same way. So I need to pivot. But then all the people are silent. Do they like the show? Do they love the show? We don't know that stuff. Analytics will tell you, though, if you look at your analytics and see how far if they're dropping off after 5 minutes, they don't like it. If your completion rate is, 60, 70%, man, I think you're doing a good job.
Right. Recently, I think it was on Twitter, I asked if my Daily Goody episodes were good or if people like it or are they just rubbish. And I was happy. Actually, probably about 6 or 7 or 8 people responded and said, no, I like it. Keep going. And I was like, because I'm terrible with marketing. I'm terrible with everything except audio production. Okay. And so I never know what my audience is thinking or feeling. So this was like one of those times where I actually got feedback and it wasn't terrible. So that made me feel good.
So you have 6 listeners at least.
At least. On a good day.
I like your Daily Goody episodes. I will say I almost wore my podcast engineering school t-shirt. But then I was like, what? I'm also in, Podcast Editor Academy, but it's Steve. I don't know. I don't think you have any
Yeah. If Chris gives me the full
do you
screen.
have t-shirts and stuff?
Here is Podcast Engineering School.
Yep.
Okay.
And then Podcast Editors Club. You can go to stevestewart.me/t-shirts.
Okay. I got to look for that.
Yeah. I've got a whole line of ones for... All right. I'm selling on Chris's show. That's not right.
Yeah. No, this is not my show. It's our show. I'm just the head clown. But yeah, Steve, you should give away a t-shirt in your Podcast Editors Club Facebook group.
We give away shirts every year during the 25 Days of Christmas giveaways.
Oh, sweet.
So it's something that we give.
By the way, you were in the middle of a list talking about YouTube podcasts. So should we continue that?
There, I put the URL. Oh, let me fix that. I was going to put the URL in my name, but here we go.
Oh.
There.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so number 4, new potential listeners will be confused. Bottom line, people are going to be confused. Hey, this is a podcast. It's on YouTube. No, it's not really a podcast. It's just a video, thing. Or will it be? I'm confused. So they're going to be confused. A friend tells them about a new show that they should go listen to. Maybe they're familiar with podcasts. Hey, you should go listen to this new podcast or go watch this new podcast. They open up the Apple Podcast app. They open up Spotify. It's not there. They're going to be confused. That's a real problem.
Very true. Unfortunate.
One question I have, because I haven't gotten into video editing or anything, but I almost wonder if people are doing both video and audio. So when I edit audio, I'm taking out a lot of those filler words, but I imagine in video, if you're taking out too much, do you just have all these jump cuts? Like, is the video version of something going to be a lot different than the audio version?
Yeah. Video, you do a lot. You do almost no editing, especially if you only have limited cameras or one camera. You just leave in you have to leave in everything. It's like Joe Rogan, right? They just do it and it is what it is. And so that's another thought I had about YouTube podcasts is that some people think podcasts are videos, right? Like people who have shows, like people on YouTube, they have a show and they call it a podcast. And it's like, well, but it's a YouTube show. It's not a podcast.
Now it can be.
I mean, it could be.
Now it can be.
Exactly, which is confusing. So I think YouTube is latching on to this new idea that a YouTube video channel is a podcast, audio and video, and that's what they're saying a podcast is. So now that's it. So and adding to the confusion as we're discussing.
Yeah. Now, Veronica, are you talking about how to actually produce if you're doing a podcast with video? Are you talking about?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just thinking because sure you can, use one of the remote recording platforms and just record the video at the same time as the audio. But I'm just thinking, I guess practically, if you're doing more edits in your audio and then you're not doing it in your video, I don't know, is that and it's the same episode, is that going to be confusing? Or maybe you just, produce it differently. Maybe you just select certain clips to put on the video for YouTube podcasting, and then you have like the long form audio on, Apple and Spotify and Google and whatnot, all your platforms.
Well, it goes back to how much time or money does someone want to spend on it, because it'd be easiest if we could edit video like we do the audio, but we can't because of those jump cuts. Although a lot of videos are that way. It's just, would it be distracting for a long form video to, every 2 seconds somebody's taking out the so it looks like that? Yeah. Would it be distracting or not? If it's less than 5 minutes, I don't think anybody really cares. But if it's more than that, it gets to be noticeable after a while. So then there's the other factors that you can do when you're producing a video that you wouldn't do with audio, and that's using something like B-roll. Like a video of a bobcat at the back door, or bears, a berry. Throwing that in there where there would normally be an edit. Maybe you get the host going like that instead of the guests talking and they're jerking around like that, or some kind of other distracting element, like all of a sudden a lower third pops up, or there's all those tricks in post-production that you could do with a video that you wouldn't do in an audio podcast because it doesn't exist. But then how much detailed editing do you want to do to the audio after you've done the video? Again, going back to the question of time versus money, or time and money. If you want to do a top-notch production for both, you're pretty much editing them separately. You're doing the same show twice. You're doing video with video stuff, and you do audio like you would with a audio podcast, if you're going to edit in detailed way like that. Because that's what I would do.
Yeah, and one workflow could be you produce the video first. So if you were going to make edits, you do whatever you want to do in the video, and then you strip the audio from that and maybe do a little more cleanup and then put that out the RSS feed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people are a little more tolerant of verbal crutches in video than they are in audio. Because in video, there is the additional sensation stuff that's going on. And I think we all just kind of expect that people are going to talk that way. But when you're listening to it, if you've got somebody who they like to say like a lot, like they say like a lot, then we like to, as like editors, like to take out the likes, or at least get rid of a few of them, right? So, gosh, it's driving me crazy. And people talk that way.
You're right. We are a lot more forgiving. Like I notice it when I'm listening to audio versus watching video. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. I've got two more, I think, on here. What did I end up with? Number 4 or 5?
I think 4.
Number 5 is for people who are like us, and I'm sure Jason Bryant's in the house. People in general will be referring to all aspects of a show as a podcast. And I think I heard somebody quote Bandrew said that podcasting will become known as long form content, regardless of the platform. I like that description. I hate it, but I like it as well because I think it makes sense. But this will be really confusing for people like us who are helping others, who are coaching people, because for us to start talking about a show as a podcast, and they're thinking they just have to hit record on their smartphone and they can post this to YouTube, that could be a podcast. But if they're not doing it in some kind of a, episodic, as we're used to a show being, every other Wednesday or every Tuesday or something like that, this would be confusing. So as we're coaching people, we've got to be, I guess just say explicit or direct on what we're talking about, so that they understand where we're coming from, and we need to understand where they're coming from. That's got to come out in the discovery call, or at least the first few meetings. We're saying, hey, we'll help you launch a podcast, but or it could be just anybody in general. We're talking to people in the hallways at a podcast conference. They say, oh yeah, I've got a podcast. It's on YouTube. Okay. Then we know they've got the YouTube mindset, and that it's going to include all these new things that haven't applied to podcasting in the past. But if they just say they've got if they're on iTunes, okay, we know exactly where they're coming from.
Right. Yeah. So you just shocked someone, Steve.
Facebook user needs to allow StreamYard to show their face and image, or their name, so they can see who they are and I can thank them.
Right.
but I'm really good at it.
Thank you, Facebook user.
Okay, last one, number 6. Oh, there was a video that I was commenting on basically that walked. It was a real short, precise, well done video from YouTube about YouTube podcasts. It was really well done. Helped me understand a lot. And I don't know why I have this as a tip, but if you're gonna, I think we've got a long way to go. I say we. I think YouTube's got a ways to go before this becomes like their standard or how it's going to work. We're going to have some growing pains in the industry because there are podcasts on YouTube, and up until recently, there really wasn't podcasting on YouTube because it wasn't the RSS feed, but Spotify broke that rule too a few years ago with no RSS feed for a podcast. We'll see. Come back to me in 2025.
There you go. That's probably when we'll figure it out and they'll change it. But I'll tell you one difference with the YouTube podcast now that's different than, for instance, Google Podcasts or any of the other podcasting ridiculous stuff they tried in the past, which didn't work, and it's completely gone. Google Play, whatever. I think this one is here to stay because it's so embedded in YouTube, and now once you can mark something as a podcast, they can't really get rid of it. So,
they could get rid of it, but it's why it's there's no reason to. It's not like Facebook, who started to allow you to import podcasts into Facebook, and then they took it away. That's a separate feature. Whereas I think with YouTube, we already have podcasts on YouTube because we could take our audio and, upload it through TubeBuddy or whatever and put the show on like Chris has got. He's got his show on there with just the static image. Just from Libsyn, the audio gets turned into a video. Libsyn publishes it to his YouTube channel and it's done. All you need is a channel and you label it as a podcast. It's there. Could they take it away? I guess, but I don't see why they ever would.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Jemmy. What's up?
Jemmy was at Podfest, and she was telling me how I actually bumped into her. She still had on her podcast editors conference wristband. She said she has never taken it off. And I'm like, okay, I got another 50 here that I couldn't give away. But that was so amazing of her. So Jemmy, you're always going to live in my heart as a fan that I'm going to be a fan of. I'm going to wear mine today for the rest of the day.
She did a webinar about adopting YouTube. Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Was that a little premature, though? Or is it just how to set up the channel? Because, again, I think things are going to change. I think they're going to morph into what's going to become more what we're going to think of as a podcast. Just because it's going to be more organized and streamlined. But the discovery of the podcast on YouTube seems to be hard. At least if you're looking for the show and not a specific person, or what do you call it? Like if I was looking for a certain YouTube video and I search how to replace a toilet seat, it's funny. Right. That's a funny joke, but you wouldn't understand it. Then you find the video, but you're looking for a show instead of just a how-to video.
Right.
I'll be curious to see how it turns out in the next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So we have more topics to discuss, and we're going to stream for 90 minutes total. So we're about halfway through, but then we're going to stop right when another awesome show is starting. And that is America's Untold Stories with Mark Grobert and Eric Hunley. And they do a Freeform Friday. So we'll mention it later, but those guys are great. And
link in the show notes.
Actually, it's not. It's just, yeah. But when we're done here, you can go there. They stream on YouTube, but they also stream on Rumble and Locals. And so go to Rumble and Locals and all that. Yeah, so Jemmy says how to set up the playlist as a podcast. So when YouTube turns on their podcast function on the YouTube Music app, they are rolled right in. Yep.
What? So it's not rolled out yet? Or I thought it was. The video made it look like it was, and the video I saw from somebody using the app.
Plus, it adds the podcast tab to their YouTube channels. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there you go.
This is stuff that's rolling out, and yeah.
And this isn't just the U.S., or is it still just the U.S.? I'm still learning. I guess just bring Jemmy on and she'll answer all the questions. For us.
Exactly. Jemmy, let's go. Come on. Anytime, Jemmy, you can come on the lounge, of course. I'll send you a link. Oh,
next
it's there in Canada as well.
Okay, well, that's good.
And Jemmy's still learning. Yeah, we're all learning. Because they're still rolling it out. It's just, we're going to have to, this is going to be a continual dance for the next however long. But we have a lot more topics to discuss, including, Veronica, one that you brought up, which I really like the idea of, is text-based editing.
Yeah,
so
and where that came from. Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
His
Where'd it come from?
sigh told just volumes.
No, because I mean, you see more and more of these tools coming out, and where that came from is, so, I've already shared. So I'm a grad of podcast engineering school, and Steve, I'm part of Podcast Editors Academy. So you all have taught me what I know. I've been producing for about a year now, so relatively new to this. And I remember when I was thinking about becoming a podcast producer, the decision for me at the time was, do I actually want to learn how to produce audio, or do I just want to be able to have some easy way to edit these episodes? So I was choosing between a text-based editor, and now you're seeing more of them. I mean, there's Descript, and I think I saw, I think Riverside now has text-based video editing. I mean, you're just seeing more and more. And so I'm curious, you all are much more experienced than I am. I mean, what do you think of kind of the time it takes to learn how to edit in a DAW and use the specialty plugins and whatnot versus the quality that you can get using a text-based editor, for someone who's thinking about that? So for me, the reason why I went to podcast engineering school, became a member of Podcast Editor Academy, is because kind of my thought was, well, I really want to understand the theory, and I want to understand what I'm doing versus, I felt like if I did text-based, that I would learn how to click some buttons, but maybe I wouldn't really understand what I was doing and why I was doing it. So, but the more that these tools come out, and I'm just curious, from your standpoint, both of you, what's the difference in quality?
Chris, you want to go first?
You could go first, but I'll just say first, they're just tools. There's a lot of tools we can use, and they all do kind of different things. And so I'm not against these text-based editors at all. The only thing is I don't know if they're perfect yet, or I don't know if they're even usable in a lot of circumstances yet. But I don't use them. But Steve Stewart, you do use them. So what do you think?
Yeah. You say I'm not against them. I'm totally for them. I think it's fantastic. If we could have had AI to help generate transcripts and then a tool to be able to edit the audio from that, what the heck do we need these waveform editors for? For editing. I'm only talking about editing, not the engineering piece. You're improving the quality sound. I'm talking about cutting, moving, pulling things around, whatever. How fantastic is Descript? How great is it that we have something like is it Edit Eddie, the Headliner one? I haven't tried it yet, but Headliner's got their own text-based editing thing. Hindenburg is now having offline transcriptions, and you could edit the text, which manipulates the audio as well. Now all these tools are coming out because the technology is there. But we were doing this old school, maybe Chris Kern remembers this. Chris, did you ever use a block and a razor blade to edit audio?
Yeah, to edit tape. Yeah, that's how I learned.
Reel-to-reel tape. How crazy is that when you have these digital tools where I can just select it with a mouse, hit delete? Oh my gosh, I don't need to sharpen a blade every couple of days. I don't have to buy new tape and use this block. And oh my gosh, if you cut it in the wrong place, it was horrible. Veronica has no idea what we're talking about because she's so young.
No.
Yeah.
But you used to record on a physical piece of tape. And then if you had to make an edit, you had to use a razor blade and then tape to splice the two pieces together. For that, you talk about I left it on the cutting room floor. That's what they're talking about. So text-based editing is really what we want, what we should be doing. However, it's not perfect, and I don't think it ever will be. There's no art in it. It's not automatic. It's still going to take a human being to do things. The editing of it, we're talking about taking out the ums and filler words into script. It's not perfect. It's not even close. So it still takes the waveform editor process. If you're going to do a detailed edit like I do, or I'm sure Veronica does, that it's going to take a human being to do that, because we know our ears can hear it, whereas the AI, I don't think it's really hearing it, if you know what I mean. It's not listening for those abrupt bad edits or something like that. And then the engineering piece, I mean, I've been very impressed with Studio Sound and Descript. I've been very impressed with Adobe Enhanced for crappy audio. For good audio, I see no reason for it. But for crappy audio, it saves me a lot of time and energy. And that's technology we didn't have 2 years ago. So it's a great shortcut for people who are trying to produce stuff and not trying to reach over to Chris's head, who's trying to master stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris, you're looking at making the audio quality pristine, and you can do all that with all the tools and the history you've got. Whereas I've got to produce this show that they recorded yesterday, and they needed to upload it tomorrow night to be released the following day. I don't have time to do all that if they're going to rush it at me. So I'm going to use something like an Adobe Enhance or Descript Studio Sound for that crappy audio, because the person showed up without headphones and without a microphone. And
right.
So my client is going to get what they get, but it's going to be better than, waiting 2 days for something that I just don't want to, work that hard on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with everything you said. And I'm, contrary to popular belief, probably, I'm not against any of these tools either. I'm not against saving time. So if something works, it works, but we also have to be very clear that sometimes when we use these tools like Descript or any text-based audio editing, it's not going to be perfect, and you still have to listen to it, and you still have to make sure it's good. Now, if you're just a hobbyist and you're doing whatever you want, who cares? No one cares. Put out whatever you want. You can cut breaths in half. You can have all these blemishes all over your audio. If you don't care, then you don't care. But when you're producing audio for clients, or you want to produce something professionally, if you want professional grade production, you just have to be careful with these tools. That's all. You can use them. And speaking of using them, speaking about that, they're different tools used for different things. For instance, Descript or any text-based editor, one great use case for that is if you're recording a lot of different audio, like radio people used to do, or documentary podcasters do, right? They'll record 30 hours of interviews, and in the episode, they're only using like 16 minutes or something, right? So if you're recording a lot of audio and you just want to look through a quick transcription and you want to clip out a quote from someone you interviewed 7 weeks ago, something like a text-based editor is perfect for that, because you're not going to be able to listen to 30 hours of audio to clip out one little thing. So that's an example of where the text-based editing is absolutely perfect. But yeah, and so Jemmy also said that there are some shows that absolutely can't be done as text-based editing, like our travel adventure show, Finding Florida Podcast. Yeah.
I wonder why. Is it because they're recording on the road? There's road noise, and it's just,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah.
That's probably it, because it's so bad. And Jason, he cut up a cart in 1998 in college radio. Oh yeah, baby. Yeah.
Veronica still doesn't know what we're talking about.
And hey, Heidi,
You
welcome.
Don't need to. You don't
First
need to.
time watcher, welcome. Jeremy says yes.
Heidi.
They do use it. She does use it for documentary editing. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, if you got a lot of tape, if you're recording something that's going to be more like a narrative, oh my gosh. I mean, text-based editing is the starting point, because you want to find the content. You might listen to it as well, but if you can find the text that you want to use and you just move it over as a clip, or, save it somewhere, you've identified it, then fantastic. It's going to save you so much time, and it's going to help you to create that storyboard, which is more of a visual medium, I guess you'd say, than audio. But the text-based editing, you're using a only visual component to turn something into a listenable experience. So it can't be all done automatically, can't be done perfectly, because it still takes that human touch. So the people who think that, AI is going to take their jobs, or, text-based editing is taking away our jobs, it's impossible. It's not going to happen. You need a human being in there to give that final polish.
Right. So Veronica, have you tried any text-based editing?
I haven't tried it. No, but I mean, I think you both have convinced me that to go ahead and give it a try. Yeah. It's just one more tool in the
If
toolbox.
there's any way you can get in the Hindenburg 2.0 beta test, please do, and move into, I think that's going to be a powerful tool once they have really enhanced and fixed it up to where it can be a public release. Or just get into Descript and practice and play around. It's going to be a little bit different. Excuse me for the dog. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a different animal, though, because if you spent the time learning how to cut tape with a block and a razor blade, and then you move into digital editing, you kind of understand the concepts, but it's like, well, wait, what's this button on the screen do? And it's confusing until you learn it. So it's just like, anything that you try that's new. It's going to be a different animal.
Yeah.
And of course, your friendly reminder that editing audio is all about what? What's the one word, Veronica and Steve? You remember from class?
Your ears.
Well, that's
Sorry.
true overall.
I wasn't listening. What was the question?
What is the most important aspect of editing audio is naturalness. When you make an edit, it should sound natural. Just as natural as someone just spoke it, and it sounds perfectly natural. That's the goal. Yeah.
I really thought you were going to say I was getting paid, but that's not really your style. So
getting paid. Speaking of getting paid, are
segue.
either of you or anyone in the chat embracing some of the new podcasting 2.0 features, including tipping with Bitcoin Satoshis and all this? No?
No, not yet. None of my clients have asked for it, and I haven't really gotten into that scene yet. I'm a fan of Bitcoin and the blockchain, though.
Yeah, so it's really new. And of course, Adam Curry, the Podfather, has a podcast called Podcasting 2.0. That's the name of the show, Podcasting 2.0. And they talk about all these upgrades to podcasting, basically the RSS feed and all the tags, because it's almost like tags in the RSS feed are like little improvements you can make, or little additions you can make to podcasting. And one of them is, for instance, tippings with Satoshis. They call it value for value. So there's an app, a listening app called Fountain. And through that app, by the way, you can listen to any podcast through that app. You can just listen. But through that app, you can actually tip Satoshis. And by the way, Satoshis are little tiny slivers of Bitcoin. That's what Satoshis are. It's 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. That's what a Satoshi is. But anyway, and I know Daniel J. Lewis, with his new show with Dave Jackson, the future of podcasting, I know they're talking about podcasting 2.0 and stuff too. See, that stuff I find exciting, because it's like podcasting started in 2004, and for the first umpteen years, there were really no updating, no upgrades, no nothing. It's like, well, this is podcasting, and okay, no, that's how we started, but that doesn't mean we have to continue that way. Now there's all this new technology. We can integrate it in very intelligent and useful ways. And so that excites me. Steve, does that excite you?
Yes, I love the 2.0 and what they're doing, and all the, what's the word? I want to say customization, but there's just so many different branches that they can go in, different ways you can include different information that wasn't existing or wasn't in existence in traditional RSS feeds. What was one I think that Apple was starting to think about was a different kind of category tag, but I think it's in 2.0.
I don't remember.
And there's locality and region and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's just the monetization with the Satoshis and the things like that. That's just one thing. There's so many different ways that you can use 2.0. If anybody has the recordings from Podcast Movement 2022, Adam Curry and Dave Weiner, I forgot his name. That's not the right name. Anyway, they did a session, and I was able to listen to it, and lots of great information. They kind of went through a list of a lot of the features that people would want in 2.0 that they've got, and a couple of things that are coming as well. I think this is great. You can customize an RSS feed that way. I don't think we can. I think it takes them to do it, but people suggest features to be added to this 2.0 spec, right?
Yeah, and the way it works is that because it's so new, like anyone can put a new tag into your RSS feed. You can do it yourself by hand if you wanted to. But here's the problem. When your episode reaches someone's podcast player app, their app doesn't recognize that tag. And so it means nothing. It just ignores it. So all the podcast player apps need to recognize these new tags, and some do. Fountain, like I said, Fountain, you can tip Satoshis. There are others who are embracing various parts of podcasting 2.0, but again, it's just going to take time because there's no like central authority, thank God, that is pushing things down onto the people. You know what I mean? This is the people creating something for the people, which is what's so beautiful about it.
Yeah, that's a great aspect too.
So someday we'll accept Satoshis, and then you all can send us Bitcoin. Thank you.
Question.
All right. And Jemmy says, to answer Steve's question about finding Florida, we couldn't use a text editor on a show like that because capturing the adventure feel requires human finesse. That brings up a point I was thinking of when we were talking about the value of doing a podcast, even if no one listens, the fact that you get better at speaking. I think that is a huge skill, being able to speak and present. And it's a skill that we should learn and keep honing. We shouldn't rely on editing to fix up our podcast, right? There should be a day when if you're going to be a very good podcaster, there should be a day when you can do your whole show and no editing needed.
If you don't have a guest.
If you don't have a guest. Now, yes, is that wishful thinking? Maybe, but is that the goal? Should be the goal, in my opinion. So I know what you're saying, Jemmy, that, when you do, adventure feel podcasts where you're on location, like the performance has to be there. You can't rely on the editing solely in post. Does that make sense? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, if we could all be Michael Hyatt, it'd be great.
Absolutely.
It'd be great not to have to edit much, but his first 100 shows, Michael Hyatt had a show called, I forget what it was called now, but he was a good speaker. And when he had his outline in front of him, he was just fantastic. And he'd still talk, he would make up whatever he's saying, but it was based on the outline he had. And it just became, at least from what I understood, I don't think anybody was there editing his stuff in detail, although he could have easily done that. And if they did, then the editor was fantastic because I never knew. But he's a good speaker anyway. To get to that point, though, it takes a lot of practice, a lot of intentionality, a lot of planning, which I think is good stuff for anybody who's getting into podcasting. Have a plan.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, just to kind of go back to what we were talking about, like video and audio podcast, I mean, to get to that point where you are so good at communicating that you don't need edits, I mean, I think that's hard to do with both audio and video. Like, I mean, I think about myself and the podcast that I host. We don't do video. It's just the audio only. And I always have, my cheat sheet, my outline in front of me. And that's what helps me stay on track. And if I was doing video at the same time and I had to worry about making eye contact and, how's my lighting and whatnot, I think that would be harder. It'd be harder to get to that point where you are doing only minimal editing.
Yeah, it's not easy, but it's like, I'm starting to work out more because, well, I will like to denigrate myself on air, but I won't. But anyway, I'm starting to work out more to get a little more healthy and lose some weight and all that. And now my goal is to be 100% perfectly fit and healthy. Am I going to reach that goal? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, at this point in my life, I mean, I'm 50 years old. I'm not 20 anymore, right? I'm not going to have abs. Although I know it's possible, but I don't want abs, whatever. But anyway, my point is, if you have a high goal that you're aiming for, the higher your goal, the more quickly you zoom up towards it. So if you have that's why goals should be high goals, because if you set a low goal, not only are you going to probably reach, you could reach it quickly, but then it could take a while to reach that goal. Because that's your goal, it's going to take some time, right? Well, what if you bring your goal all the way up here and you start? Well, now if you go halfway, look at how far you just came halfway. You blew away that smaller goal. So setting big goals like that and envisioning yourself in the future in a very high state with high skill level and all that, that alone pulls you up toward it. So that was my point. None of us are really ever going to be perfect. And Brad Hargis says, Chris pumping some iron. That's right. You guys want to see me do some pull-ups in the lounge? I'll do it if you donate some Satoshis. Oh.
Say, we'll wait. Veronica can carry the show while you're gone. He comes back all sweaty. He's got a couple of irons on him. He's like, oh.
What's up, Brad? Brad is one of the founding lounge lizards. You should come on here again sometime, Brad.
Something that what Chris was talking about is, when you set that goal and if you set a really big goal, it's just like a New Year's resolution. Sometimes it's so big and monstrous that yes, you can accomplish it. Do you have the time to is the first question. But really the big thing there is the motivation to keep you going on it. There's got to be motivation there to maybe you set yourself little goals like Chris was saying, and little rewards along the way. When in financial coaching, one of the big things we talk about is getting those little wins along the way. Because if you're looking at paying off, $5,000 of credit card debt and a $10,000 car and $30,000 worth of student loans, oh my gosh, it's like, how would I ever finish? But then if you're looking at it and you take it bit by bit, okay, let's get that $5,000 credit card paid off fast. You do that, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm motivated. And you hit that next tier and it keeps you going. And that's the thing is to finish the race, you just got to keep going. You can't think about, oh, okay, I got to this point and I'm done. No, that's the motivation to keep going. Reach that big goal.
Oh yeah, and we're totally coming full circle because we're coming back to what we talked about at the beginning, just the importance of building that momentum. So yeah.
Right? Becoming something. I had a sort of a success coach at one point who told us it's all about becoming something. It's not about achieving. Mm-hmm. I mean, you will achieve, that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with achieving and gaining wealth and all that, right? In contrast to what some people think, but there's nothing wrong with that because it means you're providing value to other people. But the real benefit is what you become, right? Because no one can take that away from you. That's what I tell all you guys in podcast engineering school. You're going to develop skills that no one can ever take away from you. Not many people have those skills and no one can ever take it away from you. It's not like Facebook can shut down your account any day. You don't know. You have no recourse. But if you develop skills with yourself, no one can ever take those away. All right, is that enough of the rah-rah?
Go team.
Go team. You're great.
Team.
You're wonderful.
It's a good way. It's a good way to end the week.
That's right. Work hard, play hard. Come on. All right. Well, we got a bunch of other topics. And by the way, if any of you lounge lizards who are listening have questions or a topic, throw it out there. Put Steve Stewart on the spot. I think we should have a section of the show every week where we put Steve Stewart on the spot. So let me see, what questions do you have
every week?
Well, even if you're not here, we could still put you on the spot.
Well, you titled this session, what did you title it? Legends Confess? And I'm like, wait a minute, we didn't talk about confess. What?
Yes, you did. You confessed a lot of knowledge already.
Okay. Sounds like it was pulled out of me or something like that.
Steve, I don't know how to title episodes. And did you ever hear of clickbait?
Have you ever heard of ChatGPT? Oh, drink.
All right. I have a question for all you lounge lizards and you two co-hosts here.
Legends.
co-host / legends. Okay, these lounge streams happen. We start with a bunch of ideas, but we don't really know what we're going to talk about. I mean, whatever. And then, but here's the thing: after the stream, like today, we talked about 2 or 3 solid topics. So after this stream, I'm going to go back and rename this video with those topics. Because then people, at least when they read the title of the video, they'll see, oh, they talked about A, B, and C. But but do you think it would be worth it to come up with, let's say, 3 topics in advance and name the video that in advance so that people, even who are here live now, they'll see those 3 topics? You think that's better, or you think it's okay the way we're doing it loosey-goosey?
Well, I think if you got a good topic, I mean, how many can you put into a title? You can only
easily
put 1 or
3
2.
or 4 small
3,
topics.
Yeah, if you keep
3.
it short, but you can't give much description in a title. You can do it in the description, but then a lot of people are looking at the title first. And if you're going to create a thumbnail, that's even fewer words to get people's attention. I think you can do both, though. I mean, especially with, you're talking about this video living on in YouTube, you can change the title, you can change the description, and you can change the thumbnail, which is the first thing people see when they sign on to YouTube, and they see you going, that's it. Oh, wait. There's a better one because I got it in the center of the screen. It's the attention grabber, and you need that attention grabber to get them to read the title and then maybe hit play from there. The same as with podcasts. I mean, you've got to have a good episode title. Otherwise, people are going to go, oh, this episode's called Satoshis. And if somebody doesn't have any idea what Bitcoin and blockchain and Satoshis are, they're going to like, well, what else is out there? But if somebody's into it, they might click the button. But getting a more description, like how to make money using Fountain app to get Satoshis. I mean, it's a much better title, although that needs a lot of work. But
so what I hear you saying is, for the thumbnail, it should be me doing curls with my guns in the photo.
Chris pumping some iron is the title of this episode of this session.
By the way, Eric Hunley's here. Everybody, Eric Hunley from America's Untold Stories, which we're going to lead into in 18 minutes. We're all going to go watch America's Untold Stories.
Get a link in there for us, Eric.
Right? Loosey goosey. See, those are my thoughts. I was like, because then we could talk about anything. But at the same time, I understand that when you put up a bland title, it doesn't hit anybody and it doesn't mean anything. And it's like, oh, I don't even know what that is. And then they scroll on,
Yeah, well, your title of this session or this video or the live stream is going to be Legends Confess. That's catchy. Just 2 words. That was a really well done title. Do we confess anything? I'd hate to have somebody show up and be disappointed that I didn't come out and say I wet my bed till I was 7 or whatever.
Okay.
Was that true? I don't know if that's true or not.
Oh, all right. We're going to do confessions in a second. Eric says, do both. Have topics to bring the live audience and then add as you go. Okay, so then we'll just... That's what I'm feeling, but here's my problem. I don't know what... Let's say I had to pick 3 topics. 3 days in advance. Or 2 days in advance, maybe. I guess that's doable.
Well, okay, so you got a couple of variables you have to think about there. Do you have people who can have a conversation regardless of the topic? And I think we're doing really well here. That's one key. That means you don't have to have a great title. You got to have people who are going to show up. Maybe you write a great title for that, but then the loosey-goosey works. However, if you want to be a little more focused and a little more value added, have a starting point, have a topic of discussion, which is why we've used both of Veronica's discussion points already. I think they were both great topics to talk about.
That's what the round table does.
Mm-hmm. Just have topics to talk about, and then you have people who can interject and keep the conversation going, and hopefully the viewers are learning. And with a live stream, this is not a podcast, but this is a live stream that will become podcast, but we're interacting with the people in the chat. You can't do that from a piece of recorded audio or video. You can only do it during the live chat.
I know what we'll do.
Till they build the time machine, and then we'll fix that.
We'll pick 2 or 3 topics. Let's say 2. We'll pick 2 solid topics we know we're going to talk about, and then I'll do ... and then we descend into chaos.
Yeah,
that'll be part of the title.
Good way to do.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, on something like this, it's like there's a certain amount of improv,
Right. So, all right, let's get confessions going then. I actually did a podcast episode within the last 6 months talking about a bunch of the different mistakes I've made recording audio, producing podcasts, and, of course, forgetting to hit record. I think I've done that twice. One was epic. And, it just, because we all make mistakes, right? It was only once, but I published an episode for a client where I think and this is one of the worst mistakes you can make. I think the first 60 seconds was dead air, and the reason it's the worst is because people click play, they hear nothing, and then they just move on. And so, you know what I mean? Like, it confuses them and they're like, what happened? I don't know what happened. All right, guess I'll move on. So what else can I confess? What about you guys?
I can easily follow that up. I mean, I've made mistakes recently, multiple times in the past few months with one of my clients where I removed something that they thought was going to be left in. The problem is you've got two co-hosts, and one co-host has made it his job to say things to crack the other guy up, even though they're trying to talk about a topic. And sometimes it gets really blue. And I'll hear one person say, no, take that out. And the other one will say, oh, no, leave that in. And then one will say, no, we're going to take that out. And they'll give me the cue to take it out. And they take it out. And they're like, wait a minute, we wanted to keep that in. So I don't know. It's variable. Maybe it's safer for me to leave it in because they actually do then go listen to the entire episode before it goes live and they can make changes as well. But it seems like I remove stuff too fast just to be safe.
Interesting. So your cutting room floor is covered with stuff.
Yeah.
You could sell those bits.
Lots of tape and blunt razors.
Right. Well, there
Veronica
you go.
has no idea what we're talking about. And you don't need to.
I'm still nodding and smiling though. It's okay.
Go watch an old video on editing reel-to-reel tape. That's REEL.
Okay. I'll have to go check it out.
Maybe Chris will find a video for you, but it's just ridiculous. And we used to do it. And it was fun. It was ridiculously fun. A lot of work. You couldn't 2x speed that. It was hard to 2x. You had to move the reel by hand to do a little 2x thing.
Yeah, scrub it. You go chukka, chukka, chukka. You find the right.
Veronica has no idea what we're talking about.
All right. But I'm like trying to think about my mistakes that I want to confess.
Oh yes, you have to do a confession.
No, so I'll say one thing. I remember, so when I first started hosting a podcast, this was several years ago, I used to try to come up with like an actual script, and then my guest would come up with a script. And I think those first couple episodes, it sounded like people reading from a script. And I didn't realize that it needed to be a conversation. It needed to be natural. It's okay to be human. I just thought it had to sound perfect. And so, that's like the first thing that comes to my mind is one of those rookie moves early on.
I just thought of a topic that maybe we should talk about, and it's about getting help. And by the way, I forgot because we're streaming earlier this week. We're not a direct lead into America's Untold Stories, but that comes later today, so tune in later. But having a team to help you, so maybe having either a business partner or a subcontractor or a virtual assistant. I've never used any of these because that's just how I run my business. But I often think of expanding my business and then I don't know how. And then you know what I mean? So what do you guys think about getting help? So there are a bunch of people here watching that are just regular podcasters and they have a lot of tasks to do, and maybe an extra helper would help. What do you guys think about that topic? All right. See you, Jemmy. Thanks for coming by, and message me or email me. And you could, if you want to come on one of the lounge streams. We're developing a big family here of lounge lizards. And you're from Florida, so you know about lizards.
See, that would get cut from the audio version of a podcast.
Oh, that is gold.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, Veronica.
Oh, yeah, baby.
You first. What was the question?
Yeah,
anyway?
no,
I forgot the question.
I think it was just all about like getting help and outsourcing. I'm all about getting help. I think it's hard. especially when you're doing something new, to go it alone. I mean, gosh, yes. Like I will take any sort of help that I can get. So absolutely, I'm all for doing that. I think the important thing is you just have to be comfortable with whoever you're working with, right? It's that whole, how many times do we hear over and over again, people like to work with those that they know, like, and trust. So
Mhm.
that's part of it. I think trying to, outsource to someone that you don't know, you've never met, um, that can be a challenge to have that comfort level. I will say, like, when I first started producing audio, at the beginning, I was just doing the basic editing that I learned from Steve. I was using from Steve's videos and whatnot, and I was just using Audacity at the beginning, and I did not know how to do the and I was outsourcing the remainder of the audio production to him until I was able to Chris, go through your podcast engineering school and learn more and become confident. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just the way I think to get further faster is to get help to fill in the gaps where you need it.
Yeah, gaps.
Yes, getting help. Absolutely. Getting help can be, for me, it's been in many different ways. Sometimes it's a mastermind. If I'm in a mastermind that's, growth, encouragement, learning. Getting a business partner, Mark Deal's my business partner on the Podcast Editor Academy, it would never exist if it wasn't for him. There's no way I'd be, it would be horrible if I had anything out there. But
I mean,
go ahead.
Barry, how cool is Mark Deal for real here?
Oh, forget it.
I mean, come on.
Forget it. He's awesome. He's the real deal.
He's the
Yeah. But now, as far as getting help, I could not make a living doing what I do unless I had the contractors that I work with. I trained them. They took a class. They actually paid to take a class, and the ones who did really well, I offered to outsource to, and they love outsourcing. And they've all been with me for at least 3 or 4 years. So there's a great relationship going there. I could not live on my income if it wasn't for them, because they're helping me out in areas where I can now take on more clients, get more work done in a short amount of time because I've got 5 hands on it rather than just 10 hands on it rather than just my 2, or 10 years on it since it's all audio podcasts. Yes. There you go.
true.
So outsourcing is great if you find that trusted person. Now, I will say that I love the fact that I've learned how to do the things myself for a whole bunch of different reasons. If a problem comes up, I can usually figure out where to go to solve it. Whether I solve it myself or I know who or what to go to solve it, because I've been there and have done it myself. So like Veronica took podcast engineering school and she's in the academy. She's learning all these different things. Does she need to know how to market her services or hire somebody out to do it? It's good for her to know how it works, but then why does she need to be an A+ expert at it? She could outsource that to somebody else. I need to do that. Outsource it to somebody else. I need to do that. So how much, again, we go back to time and energy do you put into it? But
Yeah, I've actually had students come through PES that they wanted to learn how to do full production, but their plan was that they're going to do that for a little bit, maybe 6 months or a year, and then start like what you're doing, getting their own team in place and managing that. And the whole reason they wanted to know how to produce audio professionally is because then they know how to manage those people.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they're hearing. They know if these people are messing around and delivering a subpar product, right? They know. You can't fool them. So
I've had a bookkeeper for 2 different bookkeepers. I had 2 different bookkeepers the past 2 years. I could do my own books. I actually enjoy doing my own books, but I pay them to do it all because it takes that workload off of me. And they also are better at those things. Like, I wasn't using QuickBooks. I was just using basic accounting software. And QuickBooks has a lot more tools in it. And they're able to then pull information and help me out to figure out these things, P&Ls, the general ledgers and all that fun stuff. I wouldn't do that at all if it was up to me. I would just forget it. I don't need to look at a P&L. Why do I need to look at a P&L? I'm making money. So there's other benefits of getting help that aren't directly associated with what I do, but it's very valuable to me in the way that, I've got Heather Zeitzwolf doing my books for me, and she's a lot of fun. If you've ever interacted with her, she's a lot of fun. So the humor aspect comes along with it. I'm paying her to be humorous, I guess.
Is she a lounge lizard yet?
No, but she totally could be. Put Eric's comment up there. I think that's brilliant. He's very succinct in what he says here, and that answers all of our problems.
Right? Create systems and routines so help can be more effective. Otherwise, they may not know how to help. Very true. That's management, right? That's some people have that management mindset. You just meet people in real life. A lot of mothers do, right? They just, because they have to manage a million things, like they just, I mean, that happens with me, and like the difference between me and my wife. I'm very focused, but she can be doing one thing with one hand, one thing with another. She can answer my silly questions from the other room, and she can be on the phone with someone, and I'm like, I can't do that. What a skill. What a talent. What a blessing, honestly.
What kind of systems do you guys use? I mean, are you using any kind of systems? I mean, well, Chris, you've got a whole procedure for how you engineer audio, but do you do anything else like that in other aspects of your life?
Interesting question. I'm going to answer that after we do our final plugs. So, because we're about 4 minutes, actually 3 minutes now away from the end. Can you believe this is going to end? Okay. All right. I'll get over it. Probably by the time America's Untold Stories starts, I'll get over it. Yes, another plug. See how this is. Look
I
at
hope
the
you're
skill
getting paid for this.
It just.
He's doing the reps. He's getting his practice, even though so that when the sponsor comes around, they can see how well he transitions and injects these little ad spots.
So promos. Veronica, I'm going to pull up your website again. And by the way, I stole the picture off that's not your website, but that's Steve's. I stole your picture for the thumbnail, by the way.
I know. I liked it. I think I have a thing with jean jackets because I'm wearing a different one today. So yeah.
Oh. Sweet. Yeah. So Mediate to Achieve. You do podcast production services, and what's the name of your show again?
So I host a show for a popular mediation website called mediate.com, and the podcast is called the mediate.com podcast. And I talk to experienced mediators. I talk to law school professors who teach mediation, and it's just all about like mediation skill development, current trends, current events in the mediation world, things like that.
Wow. What a skill. All right, links below, everybody. And now, of course, we have Steve Stewart. This is his Podcast Editor Academy, which is such a great learning institution for podcast editors and producers. The value you get here is insane, first of all. That's just, I mean, if someone was starting out, if someone wanted to become a podcast editor, I'd say go join this Podcast Editor Academy for at least a year minimum, and then just go nuts, because what you're providing is really good, Steve. And I know I've known you for a long time, and I'm not just saying this. Like this is for real here. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of good businessy stuff in there. We've got tutorials on how people edit with Audition and Hindenburg and all this stuff in there. We've got sales script. You know what? I shouldn't even promote that, because what I'm really interested in is promoting, and because I'm excited literally about this, is the Show Notes Summit at shownotessummit.com, because we're going to be we did this in 2021, one of the best things we've ever done. Now, you don't have to join the Academy to attend the Show Notes Summit, but if you want to learn more about podcast SEO, how to write great titles, and what's really great is we've got 2 people coming on to talk about how to make your websites accessible, meaning these are 2 legally blind people telling us how our websites can be accessible to people like them, because they've been in it for a decade, I think. So the Show Notes Summit is going to be a live stream on May 6th. We've got 2 different types of passes. One is live access, which will get you into the live. You've got some bonus content there. You can sign in now and actually learn some things. But if you go with the All Access Pass, you get the replays from this year and all of the Show Notes Summit videos and bonuses we've had from 2 years ago. So you can actually start learning today about Show Notes, SEO, Gutenberg, transcripts, AI, You can start learning all that stuff now. And then when the live one happens on May 6th, you'll get newer and more information about basically what Google's going to look at.
That is so good. Yeah, what a focused learning experience, right? And that's so those are so valuable, where you can go in, pretty much learn everything about a certain subject and be able to implement it. So all right, we'll put that link below. I don't think it's there yet, but I'll put it in there after. But what's the URL again?
ShowNotesSummit.com. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you for the compliment.
Right? Yeah, the first Show Note Summit was incredible.
Oh my gosh,
also
it was so great.
Known as The Bomb. Okay. And Brad Hargis, thanks, brother. Good to see you here. And again, let's chat. You want to come on the lounge? Let's do it. Just you guys have to ping me because I'm doing quite a few things. So there you go. And of course, don't forget, obviously, Podcast Engineering School. We've been talking about it the whole time. That's my school. Oh yeah, Steve has it up on the wall. Oh yeah. So wow. Well, we're out of time. But you asked a question for us and about systems. What systems do we have in place? You want to go first, Veronica?
Sure. I'm trying to brainstorm. So I mean, I'll use templates for like getting work done, right? So I mean, Chris, you taught me, and I think you taught me as well, Steve, like creating a template for your show, and we have the intro and outro music and everything already set up, templates for show notes, and that I've created as a result of watching your videos from the first Show Notes Summit, Steve. In terms of working with others, so that was one of the reasons why I attended podcast engineering school, is because like my business is still at the startup phase, and so it doesn't really quite make sense for me to outsource now. So now that I've completed podcast engineering school, I no longer outsource, so I'm doing all the work. But yes, I mean, eventually, as I grow, I would like to outsource once again, and then certainly I will do more processes. But at least in terms of my own work, templates where I can, that's really been like the best process for me. Doing my own accounting, I have in my calendar that I do that. Like, I do it once every 3 months, and that's enough for me for where I'm at. But just kind of scheduling those certain tasks in.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of the same things, a lot of templates and, production stuff. You can have templates and, plug-in chains and things like that. Really helpful. Also, because I'm not actually doing much production for clients anymore, but when I had a spreadsheet of every episode in chronological order. So, and I would, as you both know, I would be there during the recording for my clients, right? Mm-hmm. So as soon as we record an episode, I would put it in the spreadsheet on its own row, and then I had columns like, did I do the cleanup phase? Did I do the editing? Did I mix it? Is it published? And I just, as I did it, I would just shade in those cells. And so every day I could just look at this simple spreadsheet and see exactly where I am, what I have to do, and nothing ever slipped through the cracks. So, and I'm sure a lot of people, this isn't unique, I don't think, but what about you, Steve?
Well, I was going to ask Chris. Veronica, you say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, and I think you mentioned this too, checklists. I think that was the one thing I thought of too, is, we talk about kind of trying to minimize those mistakes as producers. I started just creating a checklist for myself whenever I'm posting a client podcast episode, like to make sure, did I upload the correct file? Have I copied and pasted the correct show notes? That sort of thing, just to make sure because there's lots of different pieces and it can be easy to accidentally upload the wrong audio, So yeah, checklists as well.
And is your checklist a system that's a service online, or is it just a spreadsheet?
No, it's just like I just have like a sheet of paper, and I know the 6 things that I do, and I jot it down, and then I just physically check mark and then toss that piece of paper when I'm done.
Yeah. So it sounds like you guys are also using make your own type of system where any type of a Kanban type Asana or Trello is going to do that. And since we're doing a lot of these things ourselves, than a Kanban type system like ClickUp or whatever, where you've got team members who are involved with the process. It's not as important if you're just doing it yourself. So I like that as well. Because it's pretty much me, myself, and I, and then I've got my contractors, and it's just a one branch out, one branch in type of thing. I just use Google Calendar, and it just has everything. If it's on my calendar, I don't get it done. And that's just everything in my life too. But my podcast production's got its own calendar on there just to make sure the tasks get done. And I love that. But I'm thinking about moving to Airtable because it is very spreadsheet based, and I do like spreadsheets. And it'd be nice to have systems down, like on paper somewhere, so that if I do have to hand off the processes to somebody else, I can get them involved in it just like that.
Well, this has been an epic lounge. Barry, of course, Barry's here with me. He's over there. Barry, what would your feeling be if Veronica and Steve never came back onto the lounge stream? What would you think?
That's frightening.
That's what I was thinking. Exactly the same thing. Because how would it be? How would it feel without them?
There's no activity, no giggle, no nothing.
There'd be nothing. So thank you both for coming on. This was really good. I appreciate you. And I think this was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. And if there's any way I can help either of you, as you know, let me know. And thank you everyone for watching. This has been great. If you have any suggestions, I like Eric's suggestion of putting a call out for questions ahead of time so folks can say what topics they want covered and that kind of thing. So anyway, but I don't know. You have any last words, you guys?
No, this has been fun. Like I said at the beginning, I mean, I've learned so much from both of you, and it's thrilling to participate in a chat like this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I love lounging around with you guys.
Lounging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this has been great. Thanks, Chris. Thank
All
you
right, so
everybody for watching.
Yeah, thanks everybody. How should we end?
It's your show. Aren't you going to play your music and we'll just...
Oh, you want me to play some music? Oh, how about we could do this song?
Oh, wait, I might have something.
This is the song I play on the outro of my podcast. All right, so let's yell "Sound Great" then. Why don't we do that?
That sounds great.
All right, well, thanks everybody for watching. And we're going to wait as the song kicks in, you'll see. But thanks for being here. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and all that. And we're going to yell "Sound Great." So, and you should yell "Sound Great" too. All right, go! Sound